Snow blanketed Basin City in 1986, muting sound and motion in the tiny plains town. Life had always moved slowly here, but that winter, everything stopped when we lost Mary. She wasn't just my sister, she was my twin, my mirror, and my better half. They found her body on the outskirts of town, half buried in a drift beside County Road 5. She was 16 years old, and someone had murdered her. I was working the night shift at the grain elevator when the sheriff came to tell me. I'll never forget his face, pale and tight-lipped, or the way his voice cracked. He wouldn't meet my eyes, and I hated him for it. "Pete," he said, clutching his hat like it might keep him grounded. "I'm sorry. We found Mary." The word "found" stuck in my head like a splinter. I knew what he meant. I could see it in his eyes. Mary had been missing for 3 days. At first, everyone thought she'd run off. She had dreams too big for this town, ambitions that made her the talk of old women sipping coffee at Hank's diner. But she wouldn't just leave without telling me. Not Mary. When I saw her body, I stopped believing in God. Her face was so pale, so peaceful, like she was asleep. But the bruises on her neck told a different story. Sheriff Grayson's hand rested on my shoulder as he said something about preliminary findings and autopsy reports. I'd barely heard him. I was too busy staring at the raw, violent reality in front of me. Someone had taken her from me, and I would find out who. In the days that followed, Basin City buzzed with gossip and speculation. Sheriff Grayson tried to calm the storm, but he was in over his head. The state police came and went, leaving no answers behind. Every lead fizzled, every theory crumbled. So I started my own investigation. I knew Mary's routines, her friends, her secrets. Or so I thought. The last person to see her alive was Tommy Callahan, a kid from school. He told the sheriff they'd argued that night by the creek. When I cornered him behind the school gym, he admitted it. She said she was sick of this place, Tommy mumbled, his breath misting in the cold air. I told her to calm down, but she just walked off. I swear, Pete, that's all I know. I wanted to believe him. But something about the way he avoided my eyes made my fists clench. "If you're lying to me," I said, my voice low and steady, "I'll find out." Tommy wasn't the only one on my list. There was Sheriff Grayson himself, whose lack of progress reeked of either incompetence or a cover-up. And then there was Benny Harper, a drifter who'd been seen hanging around town in the weeks before Mary's death. The sheriff claimed Benny had left town the day after Mary went missing, but I didn't buy it. Night after night, I scoured the frozen streets, questioning anyone who might know something. Most of them avoided me, their faces clouded with pity or fear. Basin City wasn't used to violence like this. It cracked something in all of us. A week after Mary's funeral, I got a call from the sheriff's office. "Pete," Grayson said, his voice heavy. "We need to talk." At the station, he laid out a pile of evidence, a torn scarf that matched Mary's, a tire iron with blood on it, and footprints in the snow leading from the crime scene to a nearby barn. It belonged to the Wilson family. "We're bringing in their boy, Kevin," Grayson said. 15 years old. Quiet kid. But the evidence, it's pointing to him. I'd known Kevin Wilson since he was a toddler. He wasn't the type to hurt a fly, let alone kill someone. But the look in Grayson's eyes told me he wasn't asking for my opinion. That night, I sat alone in Mary's room, surrounded by the echoes of her life. Her laughter, her music, her dreams. I didn't know if Kevin Wilson was guilty, but I did know one thing: the truth wasn't as simple as it seemed. And I wouldn't rest until I uncovered it. No matter where it led. Winter had Basin City by the throat in 1986. Snow piled high, winds howled, and the roads turned to ice. But nothing froze the town quite like Mary Weston's murder. When we found her body, I knew this case would haunt me for the rest of my life. I'd been sheriff for 12 years, and Basin City had always been quiet. The kind of place where folks left their doors unlocked and waved at strangers. This murder changed everything. Pete Weston, Mary's twin brother, took it the hardest. He'd always been a good kid, hardworking and polite, but after Mary's death, something inside him snapped. He hounded me day and night, demanding answers I didn't have. I couldn't blame him. I wanted answers too. The investigation started cold and stayed that way. No fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing but the snow-covered crime scene. The state police sent a couple of guys to help, but they didn't last long. Basin City wasn't their turf, and they didn't know the people like I did. About a week in, we got our first break. An old farmer called in to report strange footprints leading to his barn. The snow had preserved them perfectly, boot prints, small, probably a teenager's. Inside the barn, we found blood on a tire iron. It matched Mary's. The barn belonged to the Wilson family, and their youngest, Kevin, fit the profile. He was 15, quiet, a bit of a loner. When I questioned him, he barely said a word, just stared at the floor with wide, terrified eyes. "Kevin," I said gently, "if there's something you're not telling me, now's the time." He shook his head. "I didn't hurt her. I swear." The evidence told a different story. His boots matched the prints, and his fingerprints were on the tire iron. But something about his demeanor made me hesitate. He didn't have the look of a killer. The pressure from the town was relentless. They wanted justice, and they wanted it fast. Pete Weston, in particular, was a storm waiting to break. He started trailing me, watching my every move, like he didn't trust me to do my job. I understood his grief, but I couldn't let it cloud my judgment. I'd seen too many cases ruined by tunnel vision. If Kevin was guilty, the evidence would prove it. But if he wasn't, we'd be letting Mary's real killer walk free. One night, Pete confronted me outside the diner. "You're wasting time," he said, his voice low and furious. "If you don't get this right, Sheriff, I will." I looked him in the eye and said the only thing I could. "I'm doing my best, Pete. For Mary." A week later, Kevin Wilson confessed. Or at least, that's what his father claimed. "He told me he did it," Mr. Wilson said, his face pale and drawn. "Said he didn't mean to, that it was an accident." But when I brought Kevin back in for questioning, his story didn't add up. He admitted to finding Mary's body but denied killing her. He said he'd panicked, touched the tire iron by mistake, and fled. I wanted to believe him. But with the town breathing down my neck, I had to make a call. I arrested him that night, and Basin City finally exhaled. But deep down, I knew the case wasn't closed. Not really. It was the coldest winter I'd ever known. The snow didn't just fall, it smothered everything. And in the middle of it all, Mary Weston was murdered. I didn't kill her. I swear. But no one believes me. I remember that night like it just happened. I was walking home from the creek when I saw her. She was lying in the snow, so still, her hair fanned out like dark ribbons. At first, I thought she was sleeping. Then I saw the blood. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I knelt beside her, tried to shake her awake, but she didn't move. That's when I saw the tire iron. It was half buried in the snow, and my first thought was to move it, get it away from her. My fingerprints must have been all over it. I don't know how long I stayed there. A minute? An hour? All I know is that I ran. I ran so fast I couldn't feel the cold anymore. When I got home, I didn't tell anyone. I was too scared. The next day, they found her body. Sheriff Grayson came to our house a few days later. He asked me a lot of questions, but I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't tell anyone. They'd think I did it. And maybe I did. Maybe, by not doing anything, I killed her just as much as whoever hit her with that tire iron. When they arrested me, I thought it was over. Part of me was almost relieved. But when the sheriff started asking about my confession, I realized my dad had lied. He'd told them I admitted to killing Mary. He said it was for my own good, that confessing would make things easier. But how could I confess to something I didn't do? I've been in juvie for 2 weeks now. They're still deciding what to do with me. Some days, I think about telling the truth. But who would believe me? Mary's gone, and I'm the only one who knows what really happened. The snow keeps falling, and Basin City stays quiet. But I can feel it, even in here. The truth is out there, buried under the ice, waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up. I have to believe someone will do something. This world isn't entirely bad. Right?